Today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at crane plumbing, and probably one of their worst eras. Back in the old days, crane plumbing used to be juggernauts. They were just as popular as Color and American Standard are today, and they were everywhere. I live nearby some areas which have a ton of crane fixtures, which explains how popular they were, but unfortunately it didn't always last. The 1990s rolled around and they pretty much fell off. Very similar to Alger, crane plumbing entered the 1.6 gallon era with a very rough start, and unfortunately it did not get any better. This was a company that made many iconic toilets, but in the 1.6 gallon era, they made a bunch of crap. Like, a bunch of crap. Very similar to Alger. Even some of their better fixtures, as explained through my toilet reviews, weren't always perfect and had a bunch of flaws with them. But while you might argue the 1.6 gallon era was the bottom of the barrel for crane plumbing, there was something beyond that, beyond the bottom of the barrel, and that's today's topic. Today we're talking about crane EcoSolutions, crane plumbing's worst era. Starting sometime around the mid-2000s, crane plumbing started pushing some very eco-friendly options for the upcoming scam that would be known as the 1.28 gallon per flush movement, which unfortunately we're still in to this day, but it seems to be only getting even worse as companies try to push for even less water. And I guess we just don't learn. But by around 2007, we pretty much went into the full crane EcoSolutions era, and I feel like we should reflect for this brochure right here, which I'll put a link in the description if you want to look at it yourself. And just take a look at this very disastrous era that crane plumbing went into. If you thought the 1.6 gallon movement was bad, you've seen nothing yet. As you can see through this beginning portion right here, you can already see a new flush mate known as the EcoFlush, which is more well known for being featured on the modern American Standard pressure system cadet made today. But these were generally offered first with some crane toilets as seen here. As you can see here, this is just a section of pressure-assisted toilets that offered the EcoFlush. This first little section over here shows off a bunch of dual-flush pressure-assist toilets, known as the EcoMiser. Not the Economiser, the EcoMiser. These two back outlet ones look pretty standard, but have the dual-flush EcoFlush. So how these dual-flush systems work on the pressure vessel is very weird. Sometimes you push up for a full flush, or a half flush, depending on which one you get, and sometimes you push down for a half flush or a full flush. Again, this really depends on the model. Honestly, I kind of find this system, especially with a handle, very pointless, because most people won't know that you can push up for a second option. Unless you know about these, most people are not going to take advantage of the dual flush system, and yeah, that's not very great. Now, these three right here are the Bigfoot models. This is a very rare model of pressure assist toilet that's basically a spin-off of the Economiser. These essentially kind of look like second generation Kohler pressure lights in a way, and they flush kind of in the same style and are somewhat pretty quiet. From what I can tell from the very few videos that exist, I think the Bigfoot, Economisers, and EcoMisers were some of the better toilets made out of this entire era. Or at least I can tell. I still need to find one. Next, you got the Economiser Bigfoots. This only shows the one version, which only offers a 1.1 gallon per flush, which is not very efficient. You take one of your better models and then make it flush on less water, so you have to flush it more times to get it to rinse properly, and even get some things out of the bowl. How smart. Honestly, the EcoMiser and Economiser debate is just very weird. I don't know why Crane even did this and called them two different things. But they did, and now we left with this confusion. But hey, it makes a good topic for another 5 misconceptions video. I still don't understand why they did this though. It just makes it a little bit more confusing than anything. Over here we have an interesting selection of toilets, and I guarantee you most of them are crappy front flushers, so that is great. Ain't nothing like quote-unquote water saving with a bunch of unreliable front flushers, right? Well, here you go. We got the Opus, which in general kind of looks like a Crane Galaxy Elite. I honestly don't know much about this, and apparently previous versions kind of look like Saratogas. So, take of it as you will. Down here, you got some dual flush front flushers. That's great. You got the Saratoga, and then you have the Crenanda. Yeah, this section is full of toilets that are probably very unreliable. As if these toilets weren't already unreliable and easy to clog enough, let's add some pointless water saving to it to make it even worse. Very smart. Now let's get to the commercial fixtures, and it's going to get a little bit weird, especially with the urinals. Let's take a look at these two urinals right here, the Richland and the Crawford, or as they're referred to as the Eco Richland and the Eco Crawford. I'm not kidding, these are literally just rebadged Mansfield products. As you can tell, the Richland is based on the third and current generation of Mansfield Atom urinal, and the Crawford is based on the Mansfield Cascade from the 2000s up until circa 2018. I've actually seen one of these, and yeah, it's about as painfully unoriginal as it looks. It's literally a rebadged Mansfield Cascade urinal. You're not missing much, I promise you. I honestly wonder what happened during this era. How did they get the rights to these fixtures from Mansfield? Did they do a collaboration that I don't know about? I will never know. But it is weird seeing a bunch of Mansfield products being resold on a crane, though it's not the first time we've seen a bunch of rebadged fixtures before. As seen in the 2000s when Crane acquired Universal Rental and reused a bunch of their products. Most notably the Atlas and Athens, for example. And the Colburn. Oh boy, let's talk about the flushometer bowls. The Crane Eco Whirlton and the Crane Eco Highmont. Easily some of the worst of their series. Now, the Whirlton generation has always been kind of a flawed mess. Ever since its beginning in the late 1930s, it's been kind of a flawed toilet, and it hasn't really gotten any better, with their most perfect version being the 1.6 one from the 90s and 2000s, but I've already talked in depth about it, about how the quality control is pretty crap and kind of messes it up. But let's be real here, the Eco Whirlton is easily the worst one. It is just full of problems, very inconsistent, and even on 1.6 it sucks. I'm not going to spoil too much about this toilet because I'm definitely going to do a review of this toilet sooner or later. But let's just say this thing is very unreliable about getting everything down without shredding like crazy. That much I'll spoil. Now, the Crane Eco Highmont has the same kind of issue, though not as bad. It's still kind of an issue. These are very crappy toilets in general. And that is basically the end of the catalog. That's all that's advertised on this little brochure. Though I would like to talk about a couple more things during this era, especially considering the timeline this was taking place at. During the late 2000s, American Standard was buying Crane Plumbing and has basically acquired them by now, with only a few of their fixtures now surviving into the modern day. But during his buyout, a lot of weird things happened during this EcoSolutions era. Some of the fixtures here were made for the EcoSolutions, and then there's others that just randomly appeared and just exist. But let's have a look at a few more. Probably the most interesting toilet to come out of the EcoSolutions era was the ComfortWidth flushometer bowl. They also made a tank version, but it's very crappy, and only one of them exists on YouTube as of the recording of this video, so take of it as you will. But back to the ComfortWidth on the commercial side. This was probably the most interesting toilet, as this toilet was made for, well, to put it lightly, obese people. Nowadays, it's more known as the White Width toilet. That was until American Standard redesigned it not too long ago to be the Madeira White Width. Or so I thought, because American Standard is so dang inconsistent, it's not even funny. But originally, before the Right Width, it was known as the Comfort Width. And it's pretty much the same as the Right Width. It's a very big toilet with a very big footprint. It's a bit weird. It's also probably pretty flawed. But I've only seen one of these, so we'll have to see when I get in touch with either the Right Width version or the Comfort Width version. But it's a pretty interesting design toilet, especially in terms of looks. Just like American Standard, Crane Plumbing also resold the Elger Titan, but rebranded it as Titan Pro. American Standard did the same thing when they acquired Elger in the same time period, but both the Crane and American Standard versions are very rare, and they're just, again, rebadged Elger Titans. And, unsurprisingly, they suck. I've seen the Ultra version, and I don't want to see one of these ever again. They are that terrible. After the acquisition of Crane Plumbing, of course American Standard had to shoehorn in their own fixtures into Crane Plumbing's ecosystem. One of these being the EcoPlacidus, which is quite literally a newer aft wall. That is literally it. They also somehow apparently redesigned the Cromwell and the Manhattan for some reason, or at least according to these little diagrams here, where the Cromwell got redesigned to a 4th gen Washbrook, and the Manhattan got redesigned into the 2nd gen Allbrook. Why was this done? I don't know, but it was completely pointless. And that is basically the gist of the EcoSolutions era, probably one of Crane Plumbing's worst era. Which is kind of sad to think about, because that was literally the last time they made their own original stuff before getting shuttered circa 2014 and no longer made fixtures. Yes, American Standard still somewhat sells their rebadged fixtures, but with very strange modifications, like the Rapid Way, when they redesigned it circa 2019 to be completely different. And I don't really know much about the Huron. I know it went through many redesigns, but I've never seen one. It's kind of a shame how pitiful this era was for Crane Plumbing, that before they closed down for good, they decided to push into this horrible 1.28 gallon scam, and made some of the most pitiful executions of fixtures ever made. Now obviously there's a lot more toilets made in this era, like the Crane Galaxy Elite, got redesigned I don't know how many times, and some other stuff too, but those reviews will come out eventually. You know, if I ever find a specific one to review, that is. But that will be it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. For the next topic of Crappa Chat, I would like to dive into the American Standard side of things after they acquired Crane Plumbing, and see what happened during that era, and some of their leftovers to this very day. But that's a topic for another day. That will be it for now.